So there's the block diagram. Of course, we'll have some time. Oh yeah, and just to conclude, on the lower left, on the lower right, there's the PMIC or power management IC, which is connected through SPMI. I would have to say that when we look across the portfolio, one of the interfaces that sometimes gets the most attention is the so-called IPC interface, or the process communication interface. That interface between the AP and the modem. So that's shown here, and there are a number of different choices. One of which is LLI. The other one is Uniport, and there are other interfaces that the industry has, which we need to prove our value in terms of getting everyone to adopt these. Why do we want everyone to adopt our interface? It's more than just self-interest. It turns out that by unifying the interfaces across the industry, there's a lot of benefit to not only the SoC provider in terms of minimizing income, area, and for cost, but also just rallying the ecosystem around a smaller set of interfaces that need to be supported. So in terms of these interfaces, this is largely a repeat of what Joel introduced us to. This shows a little bit more detail. You can see that V5 over the last 18 months or so, we've increased it to 1.5 gigabit per second per lane. M5's roadmap is currently at Gear 2, which is the 3 gigabit per second. And I'll show on the roadmap that there are plans to increase that. Camera and display are in the process of migrating from D5 to M5. Unipro is now broadly used within the emerging CSI3, DSI2, as well as within JEDEC and USB IF, gigabit tray. So the USB 3 initially is emerging. LLI, HSI is an interface that was originally what we call a legacy spec, and it was contributed by one of the original members of MIPI, and is kind of stuck around for reasons of simplicity as well as performance. Over time, that will very likely exit, and other newer interfaces take over, including things like LLI and Unipro-based. Slimbus, of course, is the audio and control interface. SPMI, power management. RFFE, which is really emerging like gangbusters. It's a fantastically needed interface in the industry. And the RFFE working group is now working on the next version to really pull in more of the components that are left alone. Battery interface is there as well. So here's the roadmap. This is the roadmap that we've been maintaining for quite some time, but never really shown outside of the TSG. You can see that it's first of all, obviously it's graphical. The main component for me is that it shows time. We typically look, or try to look, 3 years ahead. In terms of, so along the y-axis here, we basically see each of our interfaces. The colors are intended to represent in this diagram, one of two things. Green represents a specification that's being approved by the board and is typically in production. So you can see that D5 1.1 and the M5, as well as all of these, are standardized, they're blessed by the board, and the industry is largely using them. You can see that blue represents these new specs or work in progress specs. So you can see to a large extent, most of these rows have a blue component, which means that we're working on it. Now some of them don't. For example, HSI is stable at this version number. It has been stable at that version number for quite some time. And there is no road number component there because its intention is to be replaced by some typically higher speed interconnect, such as LLI, or a Unipro-based interface. Now, I'm not going to go through the details of this. I think one of the more interesting ones is that one of the success stories of MIPI really is the PHY. It's really the crown jewel, many of us believe, for MIPI. In particular D-PHY, and now what's upcoming in the M-PHY. So our roadmap for M-PHY is currently at what we call Year 1, which is the version 1.0 at 1.5 gigabits per second. It's doubling in bandwidth to 3 gigabits per second per lane. And then we have plans for Year 3, and I could probably somewhat boldly say that we're looking at a Year 4, which is upwards of 12 gigabits per second. And again, why do we do this? It's really a trade-off of power versus pins. As we move to, as many of us look at 20 and 14 nanometer products, in order to keep the pitch at a reasonable level, we really need to minimize the number of pins. And this is what is one of the drivers for this activity for that PHY. So that's really the last slide. The one slide that we agreed not to show for this audience with me over time, and then in fact I've already given some peeks as to what we are thinking about with regards to other interfaces. For example, the M-PHY roadmap. But we do have longer-term roadmap items for many of these interfaces, and it's something that over time will probably, at least I hope, we reveal to the members at large, just so that we can give them better visibility as to what's going on. My view is that longer-term planning is better than short-term planning. So we're gonna revisit this within the TSG and the board to see exactly how far we can reveal what we're thinking. So on that note, I think I'll conclude, and if there are any questions, I'd be happy to take them.
Anybody have any questions for Rick?
You have not included sensor interfaces in this slide.
So the question was, we have not included sensor interfaces. That's true. Today we'll learn at the board that these, in fact, I didn't include the test interface provider. So we have a sensor group that's being queued up to form an investigation group. So with some good luck, they'll be kicked off today and ready to go. We also have a test investigation group already shown, and they're ramping up in order to facilitate the testing of our products as our products become more kind of tightly integrated. You'll notice that even though I don't have a representation of it, we have the PHY layer, we have typically a link layer, and those, when you do have a stack up such as M-PHY, on top of which may be Unipro, on top of which may be a UFS SCSI protocol, for example, how do you test the entire stack? So thus far in MIPI, we've identified kind of component or unit tests for PHY, and similarly, there are many protocol tests that one can do. The question is, how do we test across those layers vertically? So that's one of the roles of the test investigation group. So no, the sensor group is not shown here, and hopefully soon they'll be ready to go and appear in that area.